everybody, Elizabeth here with this month's cosplay segment. And this month I'm going to be talking about sewing patterns. I'm going to talk about the best time to buy them, where to buy them, which ones I recommend using, and how to look for sewing patterns for your upcoming project. Now, I've talked about sewing patterns before in using them, actually using them in your costumes. So this one's going to be a little bit different, a little more of a general talk about sewing patterns. Now, up until maybe like 6 months to a year ago, using sewing patterns in cosplay was kind of almost like an experiment. So you had to look through the books for pattern pieces that you needed that could be used for your costume, because patterns weren't made specifically for a lot of the cosplay stuff that you saw. There's always been, the costume patterns in the costume books, a lot of stuff for Renaissance fair type things, generic things you can use for plays, and some recreation type things, but not a ton. And you really had to look through that section and the other sections to find what you needed and kind of Frankenstein together a pattern that you could use for your costume. You know, a collar from this, and a bodice from that, and a sleeve from that one, and a skirt from this other one, and then boom, you have your sewing pattern. And you had to make a mock-up, which you should still do anyway, and piece together pieces, add things, remove things, and if you use patterns to create your costumes, that's how it worked. So recently, within the past year, especially within the past like 6 months it seems, the sewing pattern companies have totally gotten on board with cosplay, which is totally awesome. So you see more and more patterns that are specifically made for things that people are recreating or trends that are going on in costuming, which is really, really awesome. So we're going to talk about those a little bit. Probably the biggest one that's come out recently is Yaya Hana's teamed up with McCall's to come out with a couple patterns. One is a full bodysuit, which is really awesome because with the patterns that you see in the fabric stores and the craft stores, I don't think that's really been done before. And then a pattern of her really awesome original peacock design costume. So hopefully that partnership will come out with more and more costumes that can be used, like that is so target cosplay. It's really awesome to see. And also you see a lot of patterns being made for specific recreation things that are huge right now, which is really awesome. So for example, I don't know why I put them so far away. This one's been around for a while too. So you have like the fantasy type costumes that have always been around, but then you have, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of this movie, but you have this recreation focus, there you go, of the Cinderella movie here. So you have that nice pattern. And then you have this Lord of the Rings style pattern here. There's also a Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, that's totally Jack Sparrow right there. Even though it doesn't say Jack Sparrow, we all know what that's supposed to represent. Also, we have, Game of Thrones patterns here. These are both simplicity. McCall's is on board too with their Game of Thrones patterns. Once Upon a Time. Also Once Upon a Time. And then they also, Simplicity, I know, has a partnership with Disney. I know this is kind of like the sexy girl thing. These are some pretty useful patterns that you can use for a lot of types of costumes. So, and you also have the Frozen patterns, and then they have one that looks like Merida, and there's so much more that people can use. I mean, I know personally, this came out a couple months after I patterned my own Cersei costume. I did this one right here, and it wasn't too tough of a pattern to put together, but this would have made things a lot easier when I went to do that. And there was one more. I mean, this is historical too because it's Edwardian, but come on, is that not Downton Abbey, or is it not? So you see a lot more of these coming out. More, like it seems like every month there's another one. Like Simplicity just came out with their Sailor Moon type pattern. I mean, it doesn't say Sailor Moon on it, but come on, that's totally Chibiusa and Usagi's hair going on. And then there's another one they recently came out with that is very anime inspired. And then also McCall's has a pattern that is totally school uniforms. And I remember when I was first starting out, I was making school uniforms and modifying them from like women's sportswear patterns, and having a tough time like coming up with that collar and how to get that collar into this blazer pattern I was using. And it's so awesome to see this pattern now, because that's a big part of cosplay, is making these school uniforms. So, you know, look in the back section of the pattern books to see this, but also look in the front into patterns that are that can be really helpful. Is just, you know, the general dress patterns. Like when I made a Princess Pluto, I used a basic dress pattern for that and didn't really have to make a lot of modifications because it was, you know, a dress. And look through the sportswear, look through the skirts and pants and all things like that, and you might be able to find something that you need. Other patterns that are very well recommended are it's a Simplicity Matrix quote pattern. I know a lot of people who have used this to make patterns that they've used for costumes. Doesn't say Matrix on it, but come on, I mean, like, what else could this, I'm going to post it up here, what else could this be? I mean, it's the Matrix. Another one, and I've used a couple times before, is this one from Butterick. It's 5954, lends itself really well to the Rose Bride dresses from Revolutionary Girl Utena. You know, all I had to really do was not have the sleeves on it for the Rose Bride outfit, and have the open on the sides past the hip, and then put bias tape all over it to finish it. And it already has the big poofy skirt pattern, and throw a petticoat under that, and you're all set. So that was one that I saw a lot back in the day that people were recommending for Revolutionary Girl Utena type costumes. And there's a lot of other things you can see lend really well to other costumes. One that I use a lot, here you go, is the Simplicity 5940. It's a generic fantasy type costume with very flowing dresses and big wide sleeves. I've used the sleeves like 2 or 3 different times in costumes. But this pattern is by Andrea Shu. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's Schewe. And Andrea works for Simplicity, and she comes and she designs a lot of their patterns, and they'll all have her name kind of on there. You can see here. So that shows that it's one of her patterns. And she is so enthusiastic about the costuming and cosplay community, and loves seeing the work that people do, even so much that on her blog, which I highly recommend following, is she's asking for people to submit pictures of costumes that they've made using her patterns. And you see some that are, you know, she's done a lot of historical type patterns. You see a lot that people have done historical, but also a lot of cosplay costumes that people have done. I know I've used it a handful, hers a bunch of times to make some of my costumes. And I highly recommend any of her patterns. And I have a couple others of hers. So this is a bunch of different skirts and bustles, which is really cool. She also does, you know, under things. So if you need a petticoat or a corset, you know, this is a good pattern to use as well. So you'll see her name a lot on the recreations to bring it back to Lord of the Rings when she did this as well, and she also has done work with the Game of Thrones patterns too. Not technically not Game of Thrones, because that's, you know, trademark and copyright infringement, but totally inspired by those shows, which is so awesome, let me tell you. So definitely check her name out when you're looking for patterns. And they've also gotten on board with the steampunk craze as well. So this is one of Simplicity's patterns that is totally steampunk. And here's one from McCall's that's kind of steampunk, probably more punk than steam. Each one of those companies has a good half dozen patterns like that in their books that you can check out and make really cool steampunk designs for, or use it for any type of costume. So this is kind of the advice that I have for making, for looking for patterns when using for your costumes. And we'd love to hear from you of patterns that you like to use a lot when you make your cosplays. So let us know. If you're watching this on YouTube, make a comment below. If you're on our Facebook page, or if you're on Twitter, leave a comment. on either of those. You can send us a voicemail, you can send us an email, send us a picture of costumes you've made using patterns that you really like. We would love to hear from you, and we'll put it on one of our feedback episodes. So if you have a suggestion for an upcoming cosplay segment, we'd love to hear that as well. And you can reach us through any of our means that we spout out 100 times during each segment. And yeah, we really love to hear from you guys. Shout out to the people who said hi to us at PortCon Maine a couple weeks ago. And we will look forward to hearing from you all soon. Bye now.